Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow seekers, my fellow space blobs, earth blobs, sparkly blobs, sky blobs, sun blobs, mystery blobs, or whatever form you are connecting with. You do not have to be a blob. You could be a cloud, a unicorn, an oval, whatever you want to be. You can be in this space, and I am here for it. I am here for all of the different forms that we take. It's not my job to tell anybody what kind of form they need to be taking, but it is my job to be myself. And when I'm being myself, I am connecting with my blobness. So there you have it. But here we are. We are here in a moment of the year that I love so much as we enter into Sagittarius season. If you've been with me for a little while, you know I love Sagittarius and the energy and the philosophy and the connection behind this energy. I am a Sag rising, so I'm already a little bit biased towards this sign, but also I have been held by this energy symbolically and practically throughout my life, and it has been the beacon that has helped me make it through. Up to this very day that I'm sitting down to do this chat, I find that this energy has been one of the most important ones to pull me through hard times, to show me the way forward, to hold me through places where I'm feeling a lot of tenderness. This has been a buoyant place in my life, and I hope that in this chat today, I can create a little bit of that energy for us and get us set up for a really beautiful Sagittarius season. So as usual with these videos, we will start by exploring the Sagittarius archetype. What is this Sagittarius archetype? What are some of the stereotypes? What are some of the deeper meanings? And then I'll take us through the themes and the transits and the energetics of this particular Sagittarius season and finish off with an intuitive reading. So I hope you'll stick around for all of that. We have so much beautiful territory to cover today, and I'm really excited about it. Sagittarius is our beloved mutable fire sign, which means that it has this ability to help us transmute and shift into new forms and new beings. And as fire is this creative element, it's the spiritual made manifest. It's the way that we do any creative process in this life. This mutable fire sign really is the place through which we get the support we need for moving and changing. It's the sign right after Scorpio, right? Where we've just done all this really deep digging and looking deep in our bones, understanding the depths of ourselves. And that's really important. And it's equally important to also be able to hold ourselves through the expansion process itself, through the moving through the world, through the changing through the world, through the experience of that. And Sagittarius really brings that buoyancy, that warmth, that optimism to that process of change. And that's why I love it so much. It's ruled by Jupiter, the planet of expansion. And when we're thinking about that, with this idea of expansion, I think it's important whenever we're working with Sagittarian energy to remember that it's not just about expanding everything all the time and just having it be big, 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 big. It's about understanding what it is that we want to experience in life, understanding what it is that we want to really see come to fruition, understanding what really matters, not just expanding everything, but really being a little bit more selective. Sages are often teased for being the people that have 100 plates spinning at the same time and never feeling like they can finish a project. And I think that is connected to this idea of Jupiter and expansion. There is this creative joy in trying all sorts of things and doing all sorts of things, and I love it. I relate to that so deeply. And yet, I think one of the lessons that I learn over and over again as someone with strong Sag energy and all of us in life is that it's not about doing it all. It's about figuring out what really feeds our soul. Sagittarius is represented by a couple of different cards in my mind. Temperance is the classic Sagittarius archetype in tarot, but I also connect Sagittarius with the Hanged Man and that Jupiterian symbol that the Hanged Man is in a classic deck. Both of these cards are asking us to look at life from a new perspective, create something new from it, not just work with the materials as they are, but to be willing to work with them in new ways and see with new visions and incorporate what we know from a deep spiritual level into our lives as we move through them. Sagittarius is also the centaur. And I've always loved that symbolism as well, the intertwining of our wild self and our intellectual self. I think this is really at the core of Sagittarian energy. Whenever you're looking at it, it is the combination of being a part of this world, being a physical part of this world, moving through it, feeling things, sensing things, experiencing life on that level, and also being very intellectual and thinking about things and having our mind out in the broad expansiveness. And how do we work with those two ingredients? How do we have them meet? How do we allow them to come together and work with us in a meaningful way? This is part of the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. The opposing sign is Gemini. And this axis is all about learning. It's all about seeing in new ways. It's all about getting curious. There's a lot of curiosity to both of those signs and opening ourselves up to the way we're shifting and changing. And finally, Sagittarius, as an archetype, as a big container here, is always interested in themes around education, philosophy, travel, the big picture, optimism, adventure, looking at things from a much larger scope, not getting so obsessed with the little details, but getting excited about the ideas themselves, getting excited about the larger process, which can be really helpful if you're somebody who's really detail oriented and wants to figure out the how in the day-to-day. Sagittarius can be a really helpful place to look for a little bit of help when it comes to zooming out. Sages get a lot of stereotypes. And they always make me laugh. They bring a smile to my face because in some ways they feel like slights, but in other ways I'm like, this is just compliments, right? Of course, all fire signs get teased for being annoying and loud. And so Sagittarius, definitely that's a stereotype for being annoying and loud. Adventurous, free-spirited, which means here and then gone again. So non-committal is a really classic stereotype of Sagittarius. Hard to tie down, hard to keep in one place. A lot of times with the stereotypes, with that kind of pop astrology perspective on Sagittarius, it's this whole idea of Sages being part horse, and you want to they want to run wild and free, which I've always found really, really funny. Only out for a good time. And another one of the stereotypes that I love is that Sages will get you in the corner of a room and lecture you on a topic that they're really interested at the time, which once again, I'm like, is that so horrible? I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've done that to a lot of people where I'm like, this is so interesting, don't you think? But all of that doesn't really even begin to scratch the surface of what's really going on when we're working with a sign like Sagittarius. For me, the heart and soul of this sign is really well expressed in a poem by Jack Gilbert. And I know I brought up this poem before in this space at some point, but this poem is called A Brief for the Defense. And I'm just going to read a small snippet of it because for me, this is really what it's all about. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. It's a really great poem. You can look it up and read the whole thing. I highly recommend. It's very much the Sagittarian energetic. But that idea of accepting our gladness, accepting our enjoyment in these moments is so important to living a life, no matter how tough and heavy this world is, because it is, right? Like it is a tough and heavy world. We're not getting into all those topics here in this space in any kind of direct way, but I'm very well aware that this world is hard. It's hard. And Sagittarius always wants to bring us back to the beauty and the hope and the vastness and the potential. And I think that that is something that so many of us are longing to feel, that energetic resurgence right now. So anytime I'm working with Sagittarius energy, I like to ask a series of questions, and they've been coming up really strongly for me. And I'm just going to share them here. Have fun journaling with these or exploring. What do I believe about this idea that it's okay to live a life that is content and joyful? What judgments do I have on this topic? What worldviews? What rules and tensions do I have about it? Does this idea of living a joyful, contented, or otherwise enjoyable life make me uncomfortable? Does it feel unjust, unfair, or wrong for any reason? If so, what does a meaningful life look like? What elements are requirements? What rules do I have about my beliefs when it comes to life and its joys and sorrows? Sagittarius is a philosophical sign that wants us to look at the big picture and look at the way that we develop an idea of the cosmology of our lives, how we fit into it, how we think of God, spirit, the energetic world that is, how we structure all of that in our minds and our intellects, in the way that we treat ourselves, in the way that we allow ourselves access to joy or enjoyment or those deeper feelings that are so important to life. And so for me, I always like to just take some time to notice what rules I may have made up over the year about how to stay alive, how to be a good person, how to be in this world, and just kind of ask some questions about what really matters to me, and really getting back to that question, am I allowed to live a joyful life? Is that something that is valid in and of itself? And I think all of us contend with that at some level, especially as we live in a world that's so intense. I think also Sagittarius wants to be a reminder that if you're just slogging along, forcing yourself to do things, that's not the whole point of this whole thing. And I think Sag is also tied, I know Sag is tied to this idea of optimism. We'll often hear the word optimism coming up with Sagittarian energy. And we live in a world over these last 15 years on the internet and the spiritual space that's been a lot about positive thinking, right? And just be in a good mood and just always be positive. But I really don't think Sag is interested in this idea of optimism in that kind of superficial way. Sagittarius wants to ask questions about why it is that we feel we're allowed to go for things or why we're not. And I think too, optimism is about looking at the ingredients we have in our lives, like a deep self-acceptance of who we are and working with those things, working with them rather than fighting against ourselves, rather than denying ourselves, rather than trying to wear a costume of something that we're not. There's this really deep honesty to Sagittarian energy that will just say it straight to your face. You might experience that with some Sages in your life, but it's also something that happens when we're working with this energy. It will say, you don't have the energy for that. That's not the thing that means the most to you, and you know it. So what are you going to work with instead? This particular Sagittarius season is really interesting. I'm noticing in general right now in the world, in people's individual journeys, this sense that it's really changing quite deeply and profoundly. And the way that the world is changing, the way each of us is changing individually as well as collectively, it's the kind of sea change, the kind of shift that's happening as we're closing out this year and as we're moving into a new calendar year, where we won't really be going back to the same forms. And so many of us are feeling it. So many of us are feeling a little overwhelmed by that, a little scared by that, a little bit unsure of what to do with that. And I think this season is going to be very, very helpful in processing that and finding some self-compassion and some sense of self-acceptance about how we're changing. And a few of the things that I've noticed before we get into the transits here are that pieces are going to be coming in to your life, and you may not know what to do with them yet. So that might feel a little overwhelming. Sometimes when you just get a really strong insight about something, a strong realization about what you need in life. I've been having so many of these this year so far, but especially just recently, even in the last couple of days before coming into this conversation. It can feel really overwhelming because what do you do with it? Where do you fit it into the puzzle of your life? But I think it's important to not worry about how those puzzle pieces are going to fit in. Just take some time to let them settle in. Just take some time to let them be there. I think that's what's so beautiful about Sagittarian energy. It's there to help us be in that mutable state and give us that support. So we don't need to get it all sorted. We just need to let those pieces come in. New cycles are starting and they are making their presence really, really known. And I think a lot of us are going to be feeling that. And rather than getting agitated about it or feeling like we have to jump to conclusions, just know that that's a process that's happening. Finally, I think this season's going to be looking at shaking up routine in the ordinary. There's going to be a lot of questions coming up about what's feeling like it really connects with you as you are now, and what's really not. And our job right now is to take care of ourselves, tend to our inner lantern, tend to our beacon inside, really take care of that, because I think it can be a little overwhelming to realize how we're changing, to realize the ingredients that are coming in, to realize the hard conversations we're going to have. That can feel like something where we may want to shut down or close off. But really, Sagittarius is going to remind us that having little moments of joy, having little moments of connection, having little moments of wonder, having little moments of taking care of ourselves through those moments is so important. It's just as important as tackling the injustice of the world. It's just as important as having the hard conversations. It's just as important as figuring out what's your truest life. And in fact, these little moments of joy are the way that we're going to be able to effectively connect with all those other questions. And I love that reminder that Sag always brings with us. This Sagittarius season for me has so much clarity, and there's even a kind of deep simplicity to the whole thing that I'm really loving. So let's talk through these transits. We have the Sun entering Sagittarius on November 22nd, and 2 days later we have Mars entering Sagittarius on the 24th. So Sun and Mars have been moving together. They just moved through all that deep work in Scorpio where we were asking deep questions about our subconscious and our longings and our truth, and going to the deepest places in ourselves and hearing the soul song from that bone deep place. Now they're emerging into Sagittarius, bringing all that wisdom from Scorpio, but putting it into this other place. Sagittarius wants to see what happens. It's very curious about what will happen if we try this or that. And I think Mars and Sun here are also both energies that want to see what will happen. So this meeting of energies is really beautiful for playing with ideas, prototyping stuff, trying things out, just flirting with the things that are starting to feel really good to you without any pressure, without feeling like you have to force yourself to do it. I think Mars in Sagittarius is also a reminder that using our life force, using that energy that helps us to do courageous things and try new things, we should really use it for the things that mean the most to us and not push ourselves too hard in directions that don't feel true. I think that will be a theme that we'll see throughout Sagittarius season. On November 27th, we have the full moon in Gemini, and this is a full moon that will be opposing that Sun-Mars conversation. And I will have a video out about that. It's either out while you're watching this or it will be out very, very shortly. So you can watch that to get a lot more details on this full moon. But what I will say about it is that it's a full moon of deep realization. One of the things that are longing to come into our lives, seeing those with fresh eyes, and two, releasing energy, rigidity, rules, regulations that we've built for ourselves over the last 6 months around who we think we need to be and how we need to do it. It's a lot about looking at life from different angles and playing with that, being willing and open to try turning things on their head or on their side and seeing what happens. As we enter December, we're going to start shifting things around here a little bit. Venus enters Scorpio. So back to some work in the sign of Scorpio, but I love Venus and Scorpio because this is a conversation that is all about deep conversations with those closest to us. And these are the kind of conversations that will help develop a sense of closeness and connection because they're very honest conversations, the kind of conversations that allow you to gain clarity if you're in a partnership or in a deep friendship or in a family situation. And I think it could be a really useful place for clarity when it comes to what each of us is really needing and how we communicate that. So it's a really tender, loving, deep transit. On December 6th, we have Neptune stationing direct in Pisces. So Neptune's been in Pisces for years and years and years at this point. And every year we have Neptune retrograde in Pisces for about 5 months. This retrograde started on June 30th and is now ending here at early December. And a lot of times you'll hear Neptune retrogrades talked about as a time of clarity, like mental clarity, where illusions and fantasies dissipate. and you're able to kind of see what's really true for you. I always like on a time where there's maybe a stationing direct of an outer planet to kind of think over those 5 months. Was there anything revealing itself to me? Was there anything that got clearer for me? Was there anything where it felt like it wasn't about the fantasy, it was about what it really felt like? This is a really great time to just kind of explore that. But also I want to say, before we move on from Neptune, that this idea of fantasy and illusion is really important as well. It's not just this horrible thing that is used against us and everything like that. I think we've been taught not to trust that spiritual, amorphous, lovely energy. And it's a reminder as well that it's okay for some of that to be coming back into the mix here as Neptune stations direct. It's an important part of who we are and how we move through the world. On December 12th, we have the new moon in Sagittarius, and this new moon is happening the same time that Mercury stations retrograde in Capricorn. And some of the questions that come up for this new moon, which there will also be a video about, are what new dreams are trying to find their way into your life? And do they feel like they are too strange or unknown to follow? Why? That's going to be the question that we will be asking around that new moon. And then let's talk about this Mercury retrograde. It's split between two signs. It'll be moving through Capricorn and Sagittarius. It starts on December 12th and will end right a few days into the new year in Sagittarius. So this Mercury retrograde brings us into the new year. And I think that's really interesting. I actually love a good Mercury retrograde in the new year because it's a great time for slowing down, taking ourselves out of this trap of always feeling behind or like we have to do everything all the time, and thinking about what we really want to bring into this life. Sagittarius and Capricorn are interested in what it means to live a life here, what it means to express ourselves and move through the world, to be here in this physical experience. And so there's a really interesting conversation going on here about how we bring our dreaming selves into the world. And I will also have a video about that. We'll get a little bit more detailed about that Mercury retrograde. And that's kind of the last big thing that's happening this Sag season. Then on the solstice, the 21st, we're going to have the sun moving on into Capricorn. And we will meet back here again for that Capricorn conversation. So let's get into our intuitive tarot conversation. I'm going to pull 4 cards for the approximate 4 weeks that we are moving through Sagittarius. I am using my classic deck today, feeling like going back to my roots and seeing what wants to move through. A card already wanted to come through, Ace of Swords. This is such a beautiful energy. And like I said, there is a clarity going on with this Sagittarius season. And I think a lot of us are feeling good about, I think a lot of us have been wanting a little bit of clarity, a little bit of a sense of, aha, I understand, I see. And I'm seeing that here with the Ace of Swords, very much in the way that the full moon in Gemini and the new moon in Sagittarius are working this season. I think we'll be finding that those are very helpful points. We have Knight of Swords, which, even though this is an air energy, it really reminds me of Sag energy in the sense of there being just like saying it like it is and straight shooting. There's an element of that in Knight of Swords for sure. I'm gonna pull 2 more here. 10 of Swords. Yes, and this is also a really important energy right now. I mentioned earlier during kind of the theme conversation that you can feel it right now in the air. You can really, really feel this sense that each of us individually is changing and the world is changing. And like, we're almost stepping into just a really different way of being in the world. Whatever we've been doing for like the last 10 years or something, it's like that's dissolving and there's something else just coming in a totally new form that I can't even fully see. But it's there. And 4 of Swords. Wow, it's all swords today. Okay. That's really interesting. You know, the sword suit for me is such an important one. It can feel challenging. I think a lot of times it can look challenging. But what's important here is that these are storytelling cards. These are storytelling energies. This is about looking at our beliefs and the way we write those beliefs and the way we connect with those beliefs and the way we talk to ourselves and the way we commune with ourselves and how that's affecting us. It's also about all the communication that we do within ourselves and in the world. So we're starting off right away with clarity. Ace of Swords is a card that denotes that there is both opening of new new things, new adventures, new opportunities, new clarity, as well as cutting away of what's no longer fitting. And I think that process will be happening as we move through this mutable season. Now, Knight of Swords kind of helps with the work of that, right? Because like I mentioned, Knight of Swords is so much about honesty and just saying it like it is and putting it out there and not looking back, not filtering. There's no filter on Knight of Swords energy. As you can see, he's riding forward very quickly without overthinking it. But what I kind of like about this is that clarity coming in will help us see elements that are really true and see elements that really aren't true and things that we've been trying to hold on to. And I think this can be just such a huge relief to have this kind of clarity coming in. Now, of course, with that means that we're also releasing energy. Anytime we want to begin something new, anytime we want to open a new chapter, express in a new way, change in a new way, we of course are going to be letting go of something. And I've always found that Ten of Swords is a huge exhale. It's a huge moment of release rather than holding tight and trying to keep the same form. Ten of Swords is that moment when we no longer have to hold so tight. It's the ultimate card of surrender. And I think so often people are intimidated by it because it is quite a vivid description and depiction of somebody with all these swords in his back. But I think for me, it's the culmination of a whole process. It's a culmination of understanding what needed to be released and that we were never in control of the whole thing and that it's okay to let go of that need to control everything. And then we have Four of Swords. And I think this is a really, really important energy right now. I know here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's dark, especially where I live in Sweden. It's dark. It is a tender time of year. The rest that I need in order to incorporate everything that I've just laid out there is huge. And all of us need that. If you are bringing in a whole bunch of new elements, you're having a whole bunch of new insights about yourself, you're having a whole bunch of realizations about what you need to release, you're having a whole bunch of, emotive release moments moving through, as well as trying to incorporate new information, you're going to need to rest. And the Four of Swords is that moment of rest. And I've always loved fours in tarot. They come up often in my chats. They're those moments of rest after deep creation. This is where we allow the elements that may have just arrived to find their place in our system. So it's a reminder too that as much as it's about prototyping and clarity and getting answers and having conversations and all the things I've talked about so far in this chat, it's equally important to have moments of rest, play, recharge, joy. And I know so many of us feel like maybe we're not worthy of that because of the state of the world, or like it's just so selfish, but I just want to remind you that it's just not. It's not wrong to have little moments of joy. Just going on a walk with your dog, snuggling with your cat, doing a puzzle, talking to a close friend. Give yourself those moments, and also give yourself moments to just lay down in the quiet with yourself if that's what feels good. All right. It's going to be a powerful Sagittarius season. I'm really excited to check back in with you as we move through it, through the moons that we have, through the Mercury retrograde. There's going to be videos on all of that. I also am running my Gentle New Year series over on Patreon. I will be guiding us through a really gentle process of switching through these calendar years. It'll start around the solstice and move us through into the new year. It's going to be 4 weeks, 4 sessions that I will be doing each week that you can watch in your own time, along with resources and rituals to really feel nourished and held. I'm also going to be doing weekly chats over there and all my usual stuff. Every single week, there's something I'm offering there. So I'd love to see you there. If you're looking for support during this tender time of year, I would love to be that for you. You can also find me on Instagram or my website. I will leave all those links below so you know where to find me. I hope you have a beautiful Sagittarius season. I'd love it if you stuck around here, and I hope to be seeing you again here for our next conversation.